Dear learners, I welcome you all to this lecture on understanding human rights. In our previous few lectures, we have been discussing about the rights of sexual minority, that is LGBTQ++. We also discussed about terrorism, counter-terrorism, and human rights in the contemporary discourse on human rights. So you'll find the contemporary issues of human rights, in which we discuss first of all the human rights, how human rights are violated in terrorism and counter-terrorism. After that, we discuss about the rights of sexual minorities, because these days you'll find a lot of discussion is going on in the human rights fraternity about the rights and the plight of the LGBTQ. We discussed the role of the United Nations. We also discussed that how the different cultures, traditions, customs, religious beliefs, they all are in many cases hostile to the LGBTQ plus rights, and because of that, you will find the rights for the LGBTQ have not been universalized. Still, there are many efforts, and you'll find that the regional organizations like the African and the American and the European arrangements of human rights, they have made some progress in the direction of recognition of the rights of LGBTQ plus plus, that is called sexual minorities. While discussing the rights and the plight of the sexual minority, the first problem that we highlighted was that there is no universally accepted definition. Who should be included in LGBTQ plus, that is still quite contested. Uh, there are there are scholars who say that all the people with LGBTQ plus orientations, they belong to sexual minorities. However, the United Nations has not brought any declaration or covenant or treaties to address the problems and the challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus. So in fact, this is one group of people that is also called minority within minorities, and that is why these people are basically facing a lot of challenges and the problems in the world, and their rights are being emphasized by the human rights advocacy groups. We discussed the international and the regional perspective on the rights of LGBTQ, that is, rights of sexual minorities. Now we are going to discuss the what is the situation, what is the status of the LGBTQ people in our country, India. India's journey towards LGBTQ plus rights presents a complex narrative of progress and persistent challenges. So both are there. The 2018 decriminalization of same-sex relationships, following a landmark Supreme Court verdict in the Navtej Singh Jauhar versus Union of India case, marked a significant victory. So, first of all, you'll find that there is recognition of what is called the same-sex relationships. It is decriminalization. We discussed that there are three categories of countries. First of all, the countries who have already criminalized the same-sex relationship. There are countries who have decriminalized, and there are countries who have legalized. So what is the status? First of all, in 2018, you'll find that the decriminalization of same-sex relationship was there in a judgment given by the Supreme Court, which is of course called by the advocacy groups as the landmark Supreme Court verdict, and that was in the Navtej Singh Jauhar versus the Union of India case. And that is considered by the advocacy group of the LGBTQ rights as a significant victory in the direction of the recognition of the rights of sexual minorities. The ruling under Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code decriminalizes the same-sex relations. So, it is not a criminal offense. That is the main contention or main ruling of the Supreme Court of India. It marked a significant step towards recognizing their basic right to exist and love without fear of prosecution. So it is no more a crime, and that is why it has provided some space to the people with those kind of inclinations or people with same-sex relationships. So now they can, they can live a dignified life that have been ensured through this particular judgment. Another important, landmark in the direction was the 2022 judgment and that was Deepika Singh versus Central Administrative Tribunal and others. And here you'll find that the Supreme Court recognized live-in relationships as forming part of the family under Indian law. But it was not only that live-in relationship was recognized, but here you'll find that this the in the ambit of this judgment, you will find this the in the scope, it was also extended to LGBTQ plus couples as well. That is quite interesting. You see that it is the live-in relations. So far as live-in relations, keep in mind that you have to differentiate between the marriage and the live-in relation. So when the Supreme Court recognized live-in relationship as forming part of the family, at the same under Indian law, it also extended this benefit or this protection to LGBTQ plus couples as well. So it means now under this judgment, what has happened that the live-in relationship, so far as the people from the LGBTQ plus couple is there, that is has been recognized. This decision offers potential benefits such as inheritance rights and hospital visitation access. However, the struggle for equal rights and social acceptance continues on multiple fronts. So that is why it is live-in relationships that have been recognized. But keep in mind that in our country, it is still, live-in relationship is still considered as taboo by many people, and it is not accepted at large in this country because of societal values and the cultural traditions, etc. But again, it has provided some space to the LGBTQ plus. Despite the decriminalization, several key issues remain unaddressed. So the decriminalization is there, but what is there? Number one, what are the major issues still that is faced by the LGBTQ plus? That is marriage equality. When we are discussing marriage equality, same-sex marriage is not recognized in India. So you see, the live-in relationship has been recognized, but same-sex relation is not recognized. Same-sex marriage is not recognized in India, denying LGBTQ plus couples the legal and social recognition afforded to heterosexual couples. That difference is still there. So the marriage, the marriage as a sacrosanct institution, it has been recognized only between the people from the heterosexual orientations. It is not allowed, or it is not recognized what is called through for the LGBTQ plus couples. This lack of recognition impacts their access to numerous benefits. The numerous benefits, for example, if they try to marry and if they want to have this kind of benefits, for example, including inheritance, insurance, and hospital visitation rights. So still, they cannot marry, and if they are marrying, that will not be recognized. Adoption rights. LGBTQ plus individuals and couples are currently barred from adopting children, further limiting their ability to build families. This is vital for the LGBTQ plus, and that's why when the rights of adoption is not there for them, LGBTQ plus individuals or couples, then what is happening that they are barred from adopting children. That is further limiting their ability to build families. Comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation. While some states have enacted anti-discrimination laws, they lack comprehensiveness and often fail to address specific needs of the LGBTQ plus community. So, the comprehensive legislation recognizing the rights of LGBTQ people in our country is still, pending, and that's why the advocacy groups or the LGBTQ community is demanding for comprehensive legislation to recognize the rights of the LGBTQ plus people to have a dignified life, have family, and other issues that they are facing that should be addressed. This leaves them vulnerable to discrimination in areas like housing, employment, and healthcare. So the advocacy groups are saying that when there is no legislation, so ultimately what happens that there are many things that they are denied, and that is like discrimination in areas like housing, employment, and healthcare. But again, a debate is there in the country that will the legislation alone solve this problem of the LGBTQ people, because the society is still not accepting this LGBTQ plus community. So it is legislation or it is social sensitization. There are advocacy groups or there are people who say that both are needed. Legal protection, number one, and number two, social sensitization means sensitizing people about the LGBTQ plus orientation. Societal stigma and prejudice. Deep rooted societal prejudices and stigma continue to pose significant challenges for the LGBTQ plus community. So that is still a stigma in the society, and that's why it becomes very difficult for the LGBTQ plus people to come publicly and declare their orientations, because they are prone to many kind of things. For example, it may that the social violence or brutalities by the people, and then it is still a taboo, and that is because of that you will find that these people are facing a lot of problem. They face discrimination, harassment, and violence in many cases, often within their own families and communities. Forget about the people from outside, even the family does not accept. Uh, you know, the family is still consider it as a taboo. And there are many related societal issues are involved. The family thinks that it brings bad name to the family if there is somebody from the LGBTQ plus orientation in the community, in the family. So that is why this social pressure that is there on the family. Because of that, these people with these inclinations or orientations face discrimination, harassment, and sometimes violence as well. Initiatives and struggles. Despite these challenges, the LGBTQ plus community in India is actively engaged in their fight for equality. Several organizations and individuals are working tirelessly on various fronts. So you'll find, while discussing the evolution of the concept of human rights, we find that first of all, it was the first generation of human rights, civil and political rights for the individuals, they were demanded. In the second step, you will find that the second generation, that is economic, social, and cultural rights, were demanded. And again, after the Second World War, you will find that when many countries they got liberated from the yoke of slavery, then right to development, that was emphasized by the global South. That was also demanded, right to development, right to self determination, etc. That called third generation of human rights. And then you will find in the contemporary discourse, if you see the journey of the evolution of the concept of human rights, which is started from Magna Carta. So, what is today the most important or contemporary discourse on human rights is about the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. So, despite many challenges in India, for example, these people means the advocacy groups and the human rights organizations and several other experts and the activists, they are trying to promote the rights of the LGBTQ plus. Um, and we have many advocacy groups, for example, legal advocacy. Groups like the NAS Foundation and Lawyers Collective are fighting for legal recognition of same sex marriage and other rights through litigation and public interest petitions. So, this is one uh, course of action that the people sympathetic to the rights of the LGBTQ plus, they have adopted this legal advocacy, and here NAS Foundation is especially mentioned, and Lawyers Collective. They are fighting for legal recognition of same-sex marriage. In the live-in relation is already recognized. So the same-sex marriage and other rights through litigation and public interest petitions. Then community building and empowerment. Organizations like the Astria Lesbian Foundation and the Humsafar Trust work towards creating safe spaces, providing support services, and raising awareness about LGBTQ plus issues. So you'll find there are organizations like Astria Lesbian Foundation and the Humsafar Trust, and they are also trying to create safe spaces, providing support services, and raising awareness about LGBTQ plus issues. That society is being sensitized. They go for pamphlets and then try to uh, try to create some kind of a space for the LGBTQ plus in the society, so that they can greater acceptability in the society. Public campaigns and sensitization. Activist groups and individuals are using various platforms like social media, festivals like Mumbai Pride March, and creative expressions like films and literature to increase visibility, challenge stereotypes, and build a stronger communities. So you'll find Indian cinema, many documentaries, and many other films, social media, to different kind of channel of communication that is being used by these groups to create a space for themselves and also for sensitizing people about the rights and the plight and the challenges and problems faced by the LGBTQ plus groups. Now, in the looking forward, you'll find while the road ahead is long and arduous, the Indian LGBTQ community has shown remarkable resilience and determination in their fight for equality. So, although these people means sexual minorities in India, they face a lot of problems. Yet, you will find that they have shown remarkable resilience in the sense that despite many challenges, discrimination that they face, they are trying to struggle for equality in the society. And you'll find here they try to invoke the Constitution of India for claiming right to equality, which is available to all without any discrimination. The decriminalization decision, though just a first step, have ignited a wave of hope and activism. That is something, the decriminalization of same-sex relation, of course, not marriage. So here you'll find what has happened, that is also even celebrated by the LGBTQ community in the country. They feel, that this is, the first step towards the recognition of their orientation in India. So you'll find that this recognition has come through judicial process, not through legislative process in the country. Because after all the legislations, either through parliament or assembly, they have to satisfy the majority of the people. And, fearing the backlash from the majority, because the society is still not ready to accept these orientations, you'll find the legislative mod have not been adopted. Rather, it has come through what is called the judicial activism or the judicial pronouncement. Continued legal advocacy, community building, and public awareness campaign are crucial to achieving full equality and ensuring that all individuals in India, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, can live with dignity and respect. So, this is what is being suggested by the LGBTQ community and the people sympathetic to the rights and plight of the LGBTQ, that continued legal advocacy, community building, and public awareness campaigns, they are important so far as the recognition of the rights of sexual minorities in the country is concerned. Now we are going to conclude our lecture on the rights and plight of the sexual minorities in the contemporary discourse on human rights. So the first of all, you find the term sexual minority or minorities is not well defined. There is no universally accepted definition of the term. So the first problem is that, at the international level or at the, there is nothing like a universal definition of sexual minorities. It is not only that no definition of the sexual minorities, but again the different components of the sexual minorities, you'll find a lot of debate and discussion upon that as well. So a society, society all over the world, the majority is of course heterosexual, and that's why for the homosexual, for the lesbians, and for the people from the same-sex relations, that becomes quite problematic uh, to have some kind of understanding at the international level. There is no agreement about who constitutes sexual minority or minorities. So first of all, there is no agreement about who constitutes sexual minority or minorities. The abbreviation LGBTQ plus plus itself suffers from ambiguity. So people hardly know what does it mean, LGBTQ plus plus or LGBTQI plus. All these are the different kind of abbreviations that are used. Even that is not understood by most of the people. So that is this ambiguity that we find, and that is why it is there is no agreement about who constitute sexual minority or minorities. The plight of the sexual minorities did not get the attention of the human rights fraternity for a long period. So of course, from Magna Carta to the International Bill of Rights, you will find that the rights of LGBTQ or the sexual minorities was not getting attention of the human rights advocacy groups. However, in the recent past, advocacy groups and the activists have started paying attention to the claims of the LGBTQ plus to fundamental human rights like the right to life, liberty, choice, and social acceptability. So now people from the LGBTQ plus community, and their problems, their challenges, their difficulties, that are being uh, highlighted by the advocacy groups. And in the human rights fraternity, especially those who are championing the cause of human rights of all the people without any discrimination, we find that there is a strong support for the LGBTQ plus community, or what we call the sexual minority. Many countries have decriminalized sexual orientation of sexual minorities, while others have legalized it. However, some countries still consider these inclinations unacceptable, immoral, and unnatural. That debate still goes on. So you'll find the three categories of countries we find here. And why we are highlighting this point about the countries, because after all, the interstate framework of the international relations is important. So first of all, the recognition of the sexual minorities in the domestic law, that is the most important thing. Even if there is some kind of declaration at the international level adopted by the United Nations, if it happens, even that will not get acceptability unless the national governments and the people at large, they are going to understand the plight of the sexual minorities. So that is why this is the problem, and that is why the three categories of countries we find. Number one, uh, for example, you'll find that LGBTQ community or the LGBTQ sexual orientation was criminalized in many countries, and it is still an offense in many countries of the world. So that is one category where it is a criminal offense. Number two, you'll find there are countries who have decriminalized. That is there are many countries who have decriminalized it is not a criminal offense. Of course, subject to many other things, so public order, morality, etc. The third important category is the countries who have legalized it. They have given legitimacy to these inclinations, where the sexual minorities have got recognition through legislation or through judicial pronouncements. So that is the third category of the countries. Despite awareness about the rights and plight of sexual minorities, cultural norms, religious doctrines, and social values come in the way of the realization of the rights of LGBTQ plus. So on many fronts, still they face many challenges. For example, the first thing is that social values, religious doctrines, cultural norms, these are not quite favorable to the LGBTQ plus. And because of these cultural norms and religious doctrines and social values, you'll find in the religious doctrine that are also considered as sin. Um so because of this, again, the rights of LGBTQ is not getting recognition or a sympathetic consideration. That because still you'll find there are many people who say that it is unnatural. That debate still goes on. It is unnatural. This inclination, or these inclinations are or orientations are unnatural, and not only unnatural, but they are perversion, sexual perversion, social perversion. These are the things that people call it. And there are people who say that who will determine what is natural and what is unnatural. That debate. You cannot say that only the heterosexual orientation is natural and the other same sex um, sexual orientations are unnatural. So this kind of debate you will find, and because of that, again, it is becoming a problem for the LGBTQ community to enjoy their rights. So after discussing the rights and the plight of the LGBTQ community, we find that uh, number one problem is that there are many countries or societies who are not very sympathetic to the uh, inclinations or the orientations of the sexual minorities. Rather, for them, it is just like a sin or a taboo. And there are countries who have already legitimized. In our country, we find that whenever this kind of mobilization is there or the advocacy groups are there for the recognition of the rights of LGBTQ plus, there are arguments that it is a cultural invasion, in cultural invasion, and it is argued by many people that in the post globalization phase, what has happened, it is not only the globalization of economy, but it is also globalization of challenges and problems. And they consider, many of the people, those who are opposed to the rights of the LGBTQ plus or the assertion of the rights of the LGBTQ plus, so they say that it is cultural invasion. It's a conspiracy as well against Indian civilization or civilizational values. And while there are others who say that we should be sympathetic to these inclinations, and we should be ready to accept if these kind of people are there in the society, they cannot face what is called the extermination or excommunication. So on both the sides are there, but still, this group that is called sexual minorities is facing a lot of problem, not only in India but in many countries. And in many countries, you will find that these orientations, means same sex orientations, they can even invite death penalty. So from the death penalty, the punishment of death penalty to other kind of punishments, means imprisonment, and by the authorities, you'll also find beside that it is not only how the states are going to recognize them or not, but the first and the most important question is, where is the social acceptability? What about the social norms? What about the custom and traditions of the various societies? Why it is becoming such a challenge for various countries? So in the light of all these, we are going to conclude our discussion on the rights of sexual minority. The first of all, we must remember that there is nothing like a universally accepted definition of sexual minorities. And the determination of sexual minorities, the second problem. The third problem is that who should be included under the sexual minorities. And the fourth problem is that you will find there is no universal declaration for the protection of the rights of the so-called sexual minorities, or what you call LGBTQ plus. So sexual minority itself is not a universally accepted term. That is still, that is being debated and discussed everywhere. But what is happening, that from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that we have been discussing, and other international declarations and the covenants and the conventions of the United Nations, we find that in all these declarations and the treaties of human rights, and in the regional instruments as well as the national laws, the uh, general feature of all these laws and the treaties are that discrimination based on religion, caste, creed, sex is prohibited. So, non-discrimination is something that is the governing principle for all these laws. So, when the non-discrimination on the ground of sex that is there, then these people, they claim equality and a right against discrimination on the ground of this particular non-discrimination clause, which is an integral part of all human rights treaties and declarations and the convention of the United Nations and the regional conventions, as well as in our own constitution. So, it is right to equality that is provided by the Constitution of India in our country. And again, you'll find that the principle of non-discrimination and equality, which is an integral part of all the rights that have been mentioned in the Constitution of India, these people are trying to invoke the Constitution for claiming their rights against discrimination, and also for getting some kind of respectable space in the society. But we can conclude that still, the recognition of the rights of the sexual minorities, or sympathetic consideration for the acceptability of the rights of LGBTQ plus in the country is still a challenge. Thank you very much.